Hey hooligans, today we are reviewing The Bear Season 3, which the general consensus seems to be that this is the worst season so far. And I kind of have to agree. And we'll get into the reasons why this season is not as good as the first two, but I feel like we should start off with the positives. Also, this is a spoiler review, so just in case you haven't seen the season just yet, this is your warning. Okay, so the visual style of The Bear continues to deliver. Every scene looks very, very cinematic, especially the close-up shots of the food, which of course is one of the main elements to The Bear, and it always makes me so hungry. The use of colors and lighting is always so well done. The music is also great, and in moments when it chooses to be completely silent, it's also really great to make it feel more down to earth. The dialogue continues to be a really strong aspect of The Bear. It always feels so real, especially the banter. It never feels like it's scripted. It kind of reminds me of Uncut Gems, which by the way, I hated. I know that's a hot take, but in Uncut Gems, a lot of the dialogue is just like people screaming over each other and it's just a headache. I think The Bear does sort of the same thing, but a lot more effective, especially when it tries to create tension and makes you feel anxious. And of course, another really strong aspect of The Bear are the characters. They're all so very likable, even when they can be very, very frustrating at times and cause me anxiety based on the choices that are made. I still find myself rooting for all of them. I care about all of them because they just like feel like genuine real people. Even the side characters are all treated with respect. In previous seasons, they've done solo episodes for Marcus and for Richie, and this season they also kind of do the same thing where they give a few characters a solo episode. So the first solo episode is actually dedicated to Tina, and it's actually directed by Ayo Edebiri, and I think it's her first thing she's ever directed, and it's really, really good. I think it's one of the best episodes of the season. It explores Tina's backstory of how she lost her job of 15 years, and then it's very, very difficult to be unemployed and in your 40s, especially when you're competing against younger people in the job market where they are more up to speed with technology. Tina didn't even know that you were supposed to submit jobs through things like LinkedIn, Indeed, and so it was really hard for her to keep up, especially when her husband is also not making that much money and they also have to take care of a child. I thought all of this was very, very compelling storytelling, and all of this led to her meeting Michael for the first time, and eventually she's offered the job at The Bear, and so she's one of the OG members of The Bear and truly understands the heart of what makes The Bear The Bear. And it was really nice to see her conversation with Michael, and it gives more depth to Michael because up until now we kind of only got one aspect of Michael, but here we got to see him more of his happy usual self and a great leader of The Bear. And it kind of makes you think, was Michael a better leader than Carmen? I just love this episode of Tina. She's such a great character. I honestly wish she got to do more throughout this season instead of just this flashback episode. The other solo episode was dedicated to Natalie, who she was pregnant the whole season, so of course she finally gives birth while she's driving, and no one is there to take her to the hospital and to stand by her side except her last option, which is her deranged mother. It's an absolutely beautifully done episode because from season 2 we know how crazy her mother is, kind of also due to her upbringing, but Natalie really has no other choice but to deal with her mother. But what makes it great is that it highlights what generational trauma can do to a family. Natalie is really, really scared that her child will have to go through the same trauma that she did growing up, and it's really cool because it shows 3 generations of girls in this hospital room. And so this episode is also very much about motherhood and womanhood. This specific experience is only understood by mothers, and so not having Natalie's husband come sooner was obviously deliberate, and I thought this was all really, really great. Next, let's talk a little bit about Carmen. He is our main character, but he actually doesn't get that much to do this time around. We see even more of his backstory, why he is the way he is, why he's so high-strung, why he's so anal about the way he does things. But I feel like it's a little bit redundant because we already saw so much of that last last season, especially that flashback episode that was so good. So it feels like we're just kind of seeing the same thing, just a little bit watered down this season. So it makes me think, where is his story progressing next? Are we just hitting a brick wall with his character? I do think his conversation when he faced Joel McHale's character, it was really great. He tells Joel McHale that I think about you all the time because you severely traumatized me. And then Joel McHale was like, I don't even think about you like at all. But then it also kind of explores the question of, if he never had this experience with Joel McHale's character, would he still be as successful as a chef as he is now? Which is a really interesting question to think about. Let's talk about Sydney next. She also doesn't get too much to do this season. Her big arc is just being very anxious about the decision she should make of whether or not to leave the bear for a better opportunity. But even this doesn't really come up until later and is never resolved. So in the beginning of the season, she was trying to move out of her dad's apartment to find a new apartment. I think this was a little bit of a missed opportunity because we could have showed her struggling with paying rent, finding a place that is affordable, and that would have made it more compelling as to why she would want a better paying job. Because what happened in this season is that she even herself said she's getting a raise so she can afford to move out. So it feels like, you know, she doesn't need to have more money. Like, obviously in real life, having more money is always better. But I wish in this show specifically, they would have pointed out Sydney wanting more money to have a better apartment or something like that, which makes us understand if she would choose to leave the bear. So the facts actually get a lot more screen time this season around. They are, of course, the comedic relief characters, which is definitely nice to have, especially when there's so much anxiety going around in the room. They are really funny because most of the time they are really stupid. That scene when one of the Fax brothers brought out soup from the kitchen to the customers and then poured the soup into the bowl and then brought it back to the kitchen, that was so stupid, but it was really funny. I do think they kind of overstayed their welcome a little bit considering they got so much screen time. It feels like they got more screen time than even Carmen. That's probably not true, but it just kind of feels that way because their energy is just so overwhelming at times. Like, there was also a bit where John Cena made a cameo and he was a Fax brother, and I was just like, this just doesn't feel funny. It just feels kind of forced as a cameo. This season, Richie is navigating being divorced and still being a good dad, and he's kind of struggling with whether or not he should attend the wedding of his ex-wife. I thought this was really great stuff because it shows that a divorced couple with kids can still remain friends and be amicable after the divorce. Marcus also had a really great moment in the beginning of the season, and then he didn't get too much to do later on, but obviously his grandmother died last season at the end, and it was really cool to see him come back to the bear and say that he wants to continue to work there because that's kind of the sign that the universe gave him when his grandmother passed away while he's still working there, because he believes that that's what his grandmother would have wanted. I just thought that's a really great way of looking at things when you're dealing with a passing of a relative. Okay, now let's get into the big problems of why this season was a lot weaker than the previous two. So if I ask you what happened this season, I feel like the answer is just like not that much, just like stuff happened. And I think it's because there is no clear direction to this season. The plot is very aimless. Like, what is the point of the season? Maybe it's the calm before the storm. Maybe the next season is just gonna be batshit crazy. And then maybe in hindsight, we would appreciate the season a lot more for it being chill. Like, the first two seasons were very clear in terms of what they were doing. The goal is to set up a new restaurant and then opening the new restaurant and having customers come. There were relationships that were established and then you break those relationships down. But from this season, even the very first episode of season 3, it was kind of obvious that this season was going to be a mess because the first episode was just like a bunch of montages. it was not establishing anything that we didn't know already, which I feel like is fine if the style of the show was more like a sitcom, but clearly the narrative and the drama is a really important aspect of this show and what made it special to begin with. And even documentaries that don't really have a story are kind of structured in a way that there is story progression. This season just had no beginning, no end. It was just stuff happening. What I would have done is I would have established in the very beginning of the season that there are going to be very prestigious food critics coming to the Bear to review the restaurant by the end of the season. So then this gives us a sense of urgency and makes the characters want to finalize a menu and give Carmen kind of this battle, because he wants to have a constantly changing menu, but everyone else is like, we have a review coming, we need to have a set menu. You know, I think that could have been a great direction to create tension, create a purpose for the end of the season. And we got like a little sense of that when the photographers towards the end came in to want photos of a particular food item, but they didn't have it prepared because they didn't have a real menu made. But I feel like if they made the review and the photography like the end goal, I think it could have made a lot more structure to what was happening this season. The next big problem of this season are the conflicts. The ending of season 2 was so dramatic, and it feels like there could have been a lot of things to be resolved, but it feels like they just ignored that and then continued business as usual. Like Carmen and Cousin said like a bunch of horrible stuff to each other, and then in the beginning of the season they were just like, are we cool? Yeah, not really, but sure. And then of course Carmen also had a falling out with Claire, and that conflict didn't go anywhere. And I know a lot of people hate Claire as a character. I mean, I don't really have that strong opinions about her, but I do think they either need to resolve the conflict or just let it go entirely, take Claire out as a character. But they're in this like in-between place of like, is Claire going to be more important in Carmen's life or not? Also, of course, one of the bigger conflicts was Sydney's big decision of whether or not she should leave the Bear. That didn't go anywhere by the end of the season either. I think at least by the second to last episode, she should have brought up the conversation with Carmen. They could have had like a fight or something and left it there, because then the next season we can resolve what happened there. And you know, it's kind of obvious that Sydney probably won't leave, or at least leave forever, because of course she's an integral part of the Bear. Also, another potentially really big plot point is that Uncle Jimmy was talking about how the business is just not profitable, and he could have brought that up to Carmen, but he also didn't bring that up to Carmen. So there's a lot of just like characters having potential conflict and then never addressing it to anybody, so then we're just left hanging like blue balls of conflicts basically. And I think it's because they're trying to split season 3 and season 4 into like 2 parts of the same story, but then at that point it's just like, why don't we have 2 parts of the same season like what they did with Bridgerton, making us wait an entire 2 seasons for like one continuous plot to get solved just feels like too much. And especially these days when seasons of television take so long to come out, people are not going to care by then. Also, another big problem I had is the very last episode. Why did we spend the entire episode at a restaurant that wasn't even the Bear? Like, this could have been a good episode if it was like the second to last episode of the season, and then end, like I said, with the food critics coming at the very last episode. Also, a lot of the final episode was dedicated to like these random chefs that I think they are real life chefs, and it's cool to like pay homage to the fine dining industry and like chefs that are important to it. But like, could we not have just done cameos? Did we have to dedicate such a huge portion of time to give them dialogue? I just felt that was like a little bit too pretentious for me, even though the whole show is like low-key pretentious. But with all of that said, all those problems said, this is still not a bad show. The Bear is still one of the best TV series on Hulu right now. I think it's definitely worth seeing. I just think The Bear has set itself up with such high standards from the first 2 seasons that this season just did not quite meet those same expectations. And it begs the question, when should the bear end? Because I feel like maybe it needs to end soon. I think maximum 2 more seasons. They're obviously going to have to resolve everything they did season 3 and season 4. I don't know if they can keep going to season 5. Like, some of the characters feel like they're hitting a dead end when it comes to their stories. Like Carmen, I don't even know where his story is going to go. Maybe they'll find ways to add new characters, but if they do that, the cast is already starting to feel pretty crowded. So I don't know if they're going to be able to do that without being able to develop all of the characters that have already been introduced. In my opinion, I think if they can resolve everything in season 4, I think they should just end it there, because if they come out with a season 5, it might just be like new random plots. Anyway, I would give this season like a 7 out of 10. It really was not bad. It was still enjoyable, especially those 2 solo episodes. They just needed to find more structure in this season for it to be better. Anyway, what did you guys think of this season? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. That's it for me, and I will see you guys in the next video. Hey hooligans, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this, then make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure to check out some of these videos available right now.